What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to this week's Bourbon of the Week. Before we get started, by the way, we're celebrating. What are we celebrating? Tell you in a minute. We're going to take a little shot here. What should we take a shot of? We got so many to choose from. I like to keep it to 80 proof, especially if we're going to do a little bourbon review here. Let's go with some Bullet. Bullet 10 year. This isn't 80 proof, is it? This is 90 proof, isn't it? 91.2. What about the regular? 90 proof. We'll stick with the 90 proof. Regular Bullet. That might be dirty. Don't really care that much. So what are we celebrating? If you don't already know, I work in an ice cream store, a little family ice cream store over here in Pennsylvania. We close for the winter, which means I get 4.5 months off where I get to bring you guys some content. Yesterday was our last day. Today is Monday, November 1st. I know you're seeing this on November 3rd, but hey, cheers. Everybody knows before we get started, time for the traditional shot. Bullet's not bad. So that's step one. Step two, you can see I still have Halloween stuff. You just said, there's my cat. You just said, Chris, it's November 1st. Halloween's over. We're on to Thanksgiving, right? But on Sunday's episode, I asked you guys to count how many were in here. If you stuck around long enough to see that part, you could win a cool prize. I'm going to tell you now. We have 1, 2, check this out, 3, 4. This one down here, 5. This one was tough just because of the lighting. 6. A little booge on. You like that? Boom. We have this skull making it 7. We have this pumpkin 8. This pumpkin 9. This little leg thing 10. Boom, we're up to 10. We have 11. I showed you this one was 12. And did we have one more? Was there 13? I thought there were 13. 13. Look at that. Boom. We had 13. Lucky number 13. As you know, 13 is a very important number in my life. So that's what we had. We had 13. Let's clean this up, though. Let's get the Thanksgiving stuff out. Boom, how's that? Look, thankful, give thanks, all the good stuff. Let's grab a glass. I think this is dirty too. Hold on. We'll go with the Penelope glass today. This is Stellum Bourbon. This is a new bourbon. This was released in March of 2021. So this has only been out for a couple of months here. This is, we're going to get into all the details on it. Non-age stated, what's it at? 114 point something proof. 114.98 proof. A very specific proof. Undisclosed mash bill, but again, we're going to talk about Stellum Bourbon and how it's connected to a few other bourbons that you might know. But everybody knows before we get started, time for the traditional sip. Not awful. So here we have it, Stellum Bourbon. This is 114.98 proof, very specific proof. I love when they go out to double decimals. That's what we do on this channel here. By the way, make sure you click that like, make sure you click that subscribe button. We're pushing 1,500 subscribers, and we are super close to getting partnered on YouTube, the partner program on YouTube. We only need a few more watch hours, so make sure you watch the whole episode. Anyway, this is a cask strength blend of straight bourbon whiskeys. So this is multiple bourbon whiskeys blended together. This is a sourced bourbon, non-age stated. No, we don't know the mash bill, undisclosed mash bill. I'm assuming it's a crazy mash bill if it's multiple cask strength bourbons blended. It kind of seems like a small batch type of deal for me. On the Bourbon Bomb of the Week, we're going to talk a little bit more about Stellum, the company, and the company behind it, because you've probably heard of them. But this is new. This was March 2021 release. They have the Stellum Bourbon, they have the Stellum Rye, then they have a Stellum Single Barrel Bourbon and a Stellum Single Barrel Rye. So that's all that they're producing at this current moment. But you know the rules, price, taste, drinkability. We're going out 2 decimal points now. I actually reached out to the Bourbon Band. You guys know I love to talk to Phil and Julie. We always like to dissect things with them because they're just so much better with these tasting notes than me. So they helped me with that. But they actually compared this to something like a rare breed from Wild Turkey, which is crazy because you guys know how much I love Wild Turkey. They're definitely my favorite line as of right now, although Old Forester is kind of Brown Foreman. It's kind of moving up in there. So, Stellum, where we're going to start, drinkability on this, 114.98 proof. Let's take another sip and then we'll talk about it. So, I'll be honest with you. This is, first of all, doesn't seem like a high rye mash bill. Usually that high rye with that 114 proof will really give you a punch. Nothing on this. Now, I did just take a shot of 90 proof bourbon, which maybe, you know, tone down the tasting notes a little bit as far as the ethanol kick goes. But this sips, I mean, smooth. I think one of the best scores I've given on drinkability has been the Booker's, the Granny batch, 126 proof or something like that. That is smooth. This is pretty damn close to that as far as drinkability, as far as no ethanol kick. When you're talking about 114.98, when I first opened this bottle, you can see it's really hard to see on the label. It's a beautiful bottle, by the way. It almost looks like a wine bottle. very distinguished, not a lot going on compared to a lot of the other bourbons on the shelf. Minimalistic, all that. I kind of love it. Very hard to see though. It says cask strength and then it says the proof at the bottom. So I didn't even see the proof on this when I first opened it up and drank it. And then I took a sip and I was like, here we go, another sourced 100 proof bottled and bond bourbon. And then I was like, wait a minute, 114.98, there's no way. This sips really well, which means we're going to give this a really good score when it comes to drinkability on this. We're putting it in the 9s, and we're going close to 9.5. We just had 9 something else last week, but we're going to go 9.5s with this. I'm thinking like a 9.57 when it comes to drinkability on this, just because that cask strength and how easy this is to sip. 9.57 seems like a fair spot for it. So up next, let me unplug my fridge here. Makes a little humming noise. I don't know if you guys can hear that. Up next, we're going to get into taste on this. And that's where this one kind of tricks me a little bit. So usually with cask strength, it's an ethanol punch, right? And then you get right into those tasting notes. But the tasting notes usually stand out distinctively. They're very easy to find because it's a cask strength. They're not watering it down. They're not doing anything to lose any of that flavor profile. This one's kind of weird though, because when I first drank it, I didn't get a lot of rye spice. As I continue to kind of sip on this a little bit more, you definitely get a little bit more of a rye spice, like an allspice, cinnamon, something like that. Maybe like a little bit of black pepper. And then you definitely still get that sweetness, which I think is what tones down. I think the sweetness is what's toning down the ethanol content. But at the same time, this seems kind of lighter on the flavor profile. I don't know if it's youth. It very well may be youth. But I also don't think it's that young because it does have a little bit of an oak on the end of this. So normally like a younger bourbon won't get into that oaky flavor profile. But the end of this does have a little bit of oak. It's got the rye spice. It's got the sweetness on this. So it has all the flavor. It's checking all the boxes. It's just kind of like half checking them. You know, they're there. You're like, oh yeah, there's that. But it's not like, boom, punch you in the face like a cask strength usually does. This almost seems like a bottled and bond, which again, when I first took that sip, I thought it was a bottled and bond bourbon. You know, tone it down just a little bit, take a little bit of that ethanol off, take a little bit of that flavor profile off, but you're going to get a great bourbon overall. This is just like a weird experience for me. Now, again, I talked about it being something like the rare breed, which maybe I'll break out here at the end. We've got the rare breed. We've also got the Kentucky Spirit single barrel. We won't compare that one, but the rare breed seems to be much more flavorful, but also still has more of that ethanol punch to it, where this one seems to be much less ethanol, but lacking just a little bit flavor-wise, but it's still delicious. So it's such a tough place to be when ranking this, because do I like that? Would I rather it taste a little bit less, but take off of that ethanol kick? Or would I rather, maybe you can punch it up a little bit more? Because again, for 114 proof, sipping like a bottled and bond, you're talking 14 proof difference, where maybe they could put that up, make it like 111 proof, 112 proof tasting wise. Obviously it's 114 drinking, but maybe you bring that ethanol up a little bit on the flavor profile will follow. But that's just me. I don't think it's bad by any means. I think it's a delicious bourbon. I think it's, again, rare breed is a very good comparable bourbon to put with this. And then we'll get into price in a minute, but this one's a tough one. It's a tough one to see where I want to put it, but we will give it a score, and let's give it one more sip. I got it. Just light. It's very light. Easy mouthfeel and everything like that. I'm going to give it like an 8.1. 8.1 when it comes to taste on this. I don't think it's bad, but it's just lacking, just so ever so slightly it's lacking something. 8.1 is where we're going to put it on taste. And last but certainly not least, we're going to get into price on this, and price on this isn't too bad of an ask. $55. $55 for a cask strength 100, I think rare breed comes in at $50, right? So that's a barrel proof. What proof is that? 116.8. So it's basic. They're basically the exact same thing. So you're talking 115 proof versus 117 proof. You're talking about an undisclosed mash bill versus we know Wild Turkey's mash bill, and then we're talking about a $55 versus a $50 bottle. This might beat out Wild Turkey Rare Breed, which is, I don't know. We're gonna have to put them side by side. That might be a good blind taste test. We are going to do that eventually. I can promise you that. This one, though, at $55 for 115 proof cask strength bourbon. It is sourced. Again, we're going to get into that in a minute. We're going to talk a pretty good price score here. Now, I'm going to give it like an 8.5 when it comes to price. This is going to be up there in our bourbon. It's, again, with that tasting profile is really all that's lacking here. And again, it's not lacking all crazy that much. All crazy that much. Does that even make sense? All that much. So 8.5 on price at $55 compared to something like a rare breed at $50. I think they're pretty close. I don't know exactly what I gave rare breed on price. Probably pushing that 9 range. So we're right there. 8.5. We're going 2 decimal out now. I'll even give it an 8.59 just put it in 8.59. That way it's closer to that 8.6. 8.59 on price. But listen, while I have these scores up, let's send it over to this week's Bourbon Bomb of the Week and talk a little bit more about Stellum Bourbon and where they came from. Let's do this. So I should probably stop drinking 115 proof bourbon this late at night, but like I said, it's our off season, so YOLO. Anyway, this is Stellum Bourbon, and the reason I didn't give you too much information off the rip is because I wanted to let you know that this comes from Barrell Craft Spirits, whatever it's called, Barrell Bourbon. They take a bunch of bourbon at barrel strength, and they make these amazing, basically single barrel, limited release, all this kind of stuff. So this is the only one I've had, New Year. A lot of people are on a Seagrass lately. Is it Seagrass? I think that's what it's called. But this is cask strength, limited New Year edition bourbon whiskey, distilled in Kentucky, Tennessee, Indiana, New York, Texas, Wyoming, and Colorado. I believe that this is only Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, if I remember correctly, which basically tells me this is probably an MGP product. Again, mostly MGP, but having Barrell behind this is interesting because this again is cask strength, just like they do with this, but it seems like this wants to be their like small batch line. So while these are all, every single one of these is going to be different, they're not single barrels because they use a bunch of different barrels to make them, but every time they do make them, it's something new. It's not the exact same. It seems like with this one, they're trying to be like, okay, we found a great recipe. Let's throw it in this and small batch it and make it the same thing every single time rather than trying to give it a unique experience. So Barrell Bourbon being behind Stellum Spirits is actually fantastic because I like what Barrell Bourbon's doing. They're doing something different. They're doing something that not everybody is doing. But at the same time, when you find something good, let's keep it. And that's what they seem to be doing here. So this isn't a long Bourbon Bomb of the Week, but I did want to tell you that. This is sourced. It's MGP. It's non-age stated. It's undisclosed mash bill. But it's Barrell Bourbon behind this. Barrell Bourbon behind Stellum Spirits. And that's what we have going on here. Who would have thought? Speaking of who would have thought that a brand new bourbon right on the market could have made such an impact here. This comes in at an 8.75, 3 repeating, we'll call it 8.75, which is a great spot for this bottle of bourbon. Again, a new release, Barrell Bourbon being behind this makes me believe that there's obviously something that somebody knows what they're doing when it comes to this release. Again, I think it's something where they found a recipe within Barrell Bourbon and decided, let's make more money off of this because it's so damn good. And that's what they've got here. You've got 115 proof cask strength bourbon from MGP, basically. I'm assuming most of this is from MGP. Again, this says, I don't know if it says it on here, distilled in Indiana, Kentucky, and Tennessee, right there. So this is 3 different distilleries and then it's bottled by Stellum Spirits in Louisville, Kentucky. So basically they're taking MGP juice or a couple other barrels from a couple other distilleries, small batching it into the Stellum Bourbon and then selling it as Stellum rather than making something new every time with all 7 or 8 different states that they've been using with Barrell Bourbon and putting it in here, and it's damn good juice. I would love to try the rye. I hear the rye is delicious as well. And then the single barrels would probably be interesting, I guess. I don't know how you can really get a single barrel if you're using 3 different distilleries, but I don't really know that. We'll try them out. We'll find them eventually. But an 8.75 is not a bad spot for a brand new bourbon on the market, and that's where we're going to leave you for today. Make sure you check me out on Instagram. Every Tuesday at 4 p.m. we drop an image of the bourbon that we're going to review. You can go on and try and guess my score. If you guess the closest, I'll give you a shout out on the channel, as well as enter you in a monthly drawing to win some cool custom Glencairns. We've got hoodies, we've got t-shirts on the way. We're talking about doing hats next. Make sure you check me out on Patreon, www.patreon.com/bourbon of the week. Check me out on there. We do cool Patreon stuff. We have a Discord set up just for Patreons, and we have a Discord set up for everybody. So make sure you check me out on Discord as well. Both of those links are in the description below. In the meantime, though, don't drink and drive, drink responsibly, and always stay healthy, stay happy, stay drinking. Cheers, y'all.